Welcome to the PetroPapers podcast. Say that 10 times fast. This is where you get your oil and gas intellectual stimulation by asking the technical questions. I'm Yoga Sri Pradhan, and today we have a technical leadership special for PetroPapers as opposed to interviewing over the paper itself. With me here today, I have Duc Lam from TechUSI. And I'm going to talk about Duc a little bit before we go ahead and get started on the podcast. For the past 4 years, Duc has been working incredibly hard as the founder and CEO of TechUSI. He's developed an incredible amount of tools to help support the industry when it comes to physics-based forecasting. Before his journey with TechUSI, he worked for Hess as a senior reservoir engineer in the global new business development, also in the Permian Basin, and worked as a senior reservoir engineer in new ventures for China, Canada, and the Williston Basin. Prior to Hess, he's worked for Apache as a reservoir engineer and a production engineer in business development in Canada, Permian Basin, and the Anadarko Basins, and in the Central region. Duc brings about 14 years of industry experience, and it's a delight to have him today on the podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Duc.
Thank you, Yoshi. Great to be here.
Well, we've been working for the past couple of years together, and I thought, your story has to be known in terms of all the hard work that you've put in, as well as just the incredible amount of tools that you've put together, and something that's pretty innovative. And you make reservoir simulation fun, let's just put it that way, and you make it really easy. I want to mention that. But for our viewers and listeners, I really want you to expand on a little bit that what exactly is TechUSI and how did you start the company?
Yeah, absolutely, Yoshi. So as for TechUSI, we actually pivot a lot in the last couple of years, and right now I can tell you kind of like a very general description, which is straight from our website. Is that USI provides a new forecasting application that incorporates a production analysis system using neural network models, learning from pre-run simulation results for the evaluation of petroleum reservoir performance. And our science-based forecaster software implements a physics-based methodology for type well matching, optimization in well spacing and timing, as well as maximizing efficiency and operational performance. In a layman term, our software draws type curve by using neural network and reservoir simulation instead of DCA, like most of the software are being utilized out there. As far as founding USI, just very in a very funny term, in the reservoir engineering world specifically, life has to be much more exciting than doing DCA, right? Fast forward 100 years from now, we are still going. Are we still going to use DCA to make business decision? Well, most likely not, and it has to come from the first principle. We foresee that opportunity, and when the right time came, I pulled the trigger. For me personally, creating something meaningful for life is much a stronger driver than being wealthy and paying bill is important, but at this point, I'm a lot more satisfied and proud with what we have achieved for the oil and gas industry in terms of production forecasting innovations.
Awesome. Like I mentioned, your story is one of those really interesting stories for me because I've worked with the tool personally, and I've had a lot of fun with the tool, and I think I see so much potential with it, which is why I really wanted to bring you on the podcast and have you share your story with other people, and and get other people involved in working with the tool as well. Because I've been talking about the tool and you've talked a little bit about what TechUSI does, I wanted to ask you, what exactly are some scenarios TechUSI has been assisting with different operators? I know what you've done with Endeavor, but what exactly have you done with other operators?
Yes, Yoshi. I think the majority of the user or the customer that been using our product and services, I think probably 70 to 80% of them are using it for the infield development spacing exercise. Same thing like Endeavor does. Um, and the remainder of the group actually use it for SEC reserve booking and documentation and operational performance, including flowback strategy and artificial lift changes and things like that. As the product grows and more people are knowing about it, I expect them to use the tool not only for the spacing exercise, but also for reserve booking, as I mentioned.
Awesome. You,
Mhm.
you answered a little bit of the next question that I was going to ask, but I think that just to give a better idea of what exactly is this physics-based forecasting and what exactly is this tool bringing as opposed to traditional reservoir simulation is bringing, what are some workflows that TechUSI is most recently working on?
Yes, Yoshi. Recently, we finished up our integration between the neural network, aka the deep learning models, and the pre-run simulation, and getting ready for our product launch in January. Well, looking back, it actually took us 8 years to get here to where we are today. And the last 7 years are really just back and forth on the R&D work. And 2021 is really the main year for us to finalize the workflow that really make the neural network to to do what it's supposed to do. So yeah, we're very exciting um, with that regard. So yeah.
Awesome. You brought up something really interesting, which segues to the next question for me, because you brought up neural network and deep learning, and it's a combination of that along with reservoir simulation to come up with the physics-based forecast. Why is deep learning as the tool of choice, and why is deep learning the tool of choice if the focus is on physics-based simulations?
Yes. So the like I mentioned in the beginning, we trying to shift the fundamental of production forecasting um, by drawing type curves, not using by DCAN anymore, and we're trying to integrate flow model into the art of creating type curves. And if we use the traditional simulation, one engineer, if they have to build a reservoir model from scratch, building the base model, trying to do history match, trying to create new wells and do drawdown and do different spacing, different scenarios. On average, I think it would take an experienced simulation engineer about 4 to 6 weeks to draw a meaningful type curve, right? It is a really long kind of process and going with that route, it just so kind of like time consuming, and it requires a lot of intensive data input requirements. So we are trying to kind of eliminate the entire process by doing like building a pre-run simulation library, and that is really the beginning phase of our R&D work. I thought that idea was going to work, but it didn't. We actually faced two big challenges during the R&D work of building the pre-run simulation library, which we are drawing all the type curve and store them in the library, and user can just access the type curve and pick the scenarios that really are appropriate to their development scenarios. Um, like I mentioned, there are two big challenges of that assumption. The one was the pre-run model was too simplified and it couldn't handle well-to-well interference, and the other one was the library of runs could never get big enough to cover all the scenarios for all the wells that our clients had. So those two biggest challenges, it took us probably the last 3 to 4 years to overcome by introducing and integrating the neural network into it, so that no matter what development scenarios you are facing, the neural network can still learning from the existing run and kind of give you the accurate forecast, and it's everything is based on physics. If that's kind of answer your question there.
It does answer my question because I think that is kind of the pathway to the future. I don't think data analytics completely replaces our physics fundamentals. I
Mhm.
think it's using what we know from our physics and fundamentals and feeding that into the data analytics just to help us move faster. I really appreciate you explaining that. I want the viewers and listeners to know just the magnitude of the work that you put in. So could you tell us at least the order of how many type curves is fed into this deep learning tool every day?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, Yoshi. I actually can tell you this. So right now we are still a small company, and we are really having limited resource. Right now we have about 30 servers running using CMOS, and CMOS is probably I would say that it is the most powerful type curve physics-based type curve generation tool in the industry, and we really partner very well with CMG to utilize CMOS to run and generate these type curves. So we have about 30 server running, and depending on the complexity of the base model each day, we're adding a few hundred to a few thousand cases to the library each day to train the neural network models, and they just get better and better each day as we go.
That's really exciting to hear. It'd be really interesting to know about the versions that come out each time. It makes me think about if I just waited until the next day, then I know that the tool is going to be better because there are more type curves that were fed into the tool. That's
Yes,
interesting.
yes.
It'd be really interesting to know about the version, like the different types of versions that come out with TechUSI every time that you're feeding the neural network. You've
Mhm.
talked about your journey, you've talked about what TechUSI does, and there's a lot of budding entrepreneurs out there, especially given the volatility of oil prices. Some people want to go out on their own, like what you did, like taking that big step. So
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give for someone that wants to start a company for a new technology, like what you're doing?
That's a great question. Well, I have a lot of things to reflect. Um, well, I really kind of underestimate the all of the obstacle and all of the trouble that I went through. Um, well, always I think I had to keep in mind that the solution that you assume when you start a business. In this case, we are like a solution provider, right? So you always have some kind of solution. I mean, some existing solution is already out there in the market, and you always see and experience that the first couple of solution that you are experimenting will be always wrong, and you always have to keep the beginner's mind. You're going to fail many times, and it's almost countless now for me and the team. But the ability to stand up and push forward is a must have, and you just cannot never give up on your vision. You have to be very flexible on the details, but you have to be very stubborn on the visions, and definitely learn how to sell first. So many resources available online right now for us to learn how to sell, not only to the customer to believe in your vision, but also to your current and future employee. That is really the bigger part is finding the right team member is absolutely key factor. And I made a lot of mistake for us because it was very hard for me to convince some of the earlier team member to believe in the vision, because me myself I didn't even have the solution to explain to them. So to kind of overcome all of those obstacles, and to come up with a real solution is, it's very hard to compensate and keep talent if your overall direction was not clear. So there's a lot of mistake that I made along the way, but yeah, always believe in your dream, and if you think that you are the best of what you do, then you should go all in.
Thanks for that encouraging advice, and thanks for that straightforward advice too, because the path isn't always rosy, and that's pretty much well known. Speaking of your journey and speaking of your path, you brought up something that's very interesting, that there's an upcoming product launch. Could you expand more on the upcoming event that's happening in Houston?
Yeah, absolutely, Yoshi. It's a pretty exciting event for all of us here at USI. With yourself being the host, it's amazing. Dr. Lee is the featured speaker, along with many past and current customers are joining us. And all of the guests are mostly operator, and they mainly the permanent operator from a smaller PE back to the independent to a few super major joining us, along with a few large service companies and reserve auditors. So yeah, very exciting. After 8 years of hard work, we're ready to show it to the world now, and really exciting days ahead of us.
Awesome. So this is going to be in Houston.
Mhm.
And what day is it going to be on?
It's going to be on January 25th, and it's going to be a half day event from 9 to 1 p.m.
Awesome. I'm excited about it. I know I'm
Yes.
excited to host it as well, but I really wanted to let other people know about your story and the tool that you developed, and then just the incredible amount of work that you've put into it. So, I mean, congratulations, Duke.
Thank you, Yoshi. Really appreciate it. Without your help, it's never be possible.
Well, I appreciate whatever contribution I've made along the way. I know it's a team effort. Well, everyone, this is the end of the podcast. You heard it straight from Duke in terms of all of the hard work that he's put in, his journey, and the upcoming product launch that's coming up on January 25th. Please be sure to provide me any feedback on who else I can pepper with questions on technical papers or technical leadership. This is the PetroPapers podcast. I am Yogashri Pradhan, and I'm signing off.